Story 1.
The sunset was fading slowly. The sun was slipping behind the still waters, leaving behind a thin scarlet beam, like a ribbon of blood. I watched this sunset, knowing it was the last one I would ever see. I sat on a rough stone but didn't try to find a more comfortable position. I savored the pain, knowing that soon I wouldn't feel it anymore. No more pain, no warmth, nothing at all. Finally, the sun disappeared beyond the horizon, and the sky took on a grayish-black hue. The first stars were already appearing when I felt her hand on my shoulder. Turning my head, I saw her slender fingers, wrapped in a black lace glove. Her pale skin was barely visible through the intricate pattern. "Are you crying?" she asked. I noticed the tears on my cheeks and wiped them against my shirt collar. The white fabric darkened. Her eyes were fixed on me, unblinking. It seemed like she was trying to memorize every movement, to imprint it on her memory. "Today is my last day," I whispered. "I know. I brought you everything you'll need. Change your clothes." I noticed the bundle in her hands. She silently handed it to me and watched, with the same unyielding gaze, as I undressed. The clothes in the bundle were all black, from the long coat to the dark leather boots. "Why do you all love black so much?" I tried to smile, but failed. I would probably never be able to smile again, especially considering what I had to do tonight. "Because it can't be seen at night," she replied calmly, as always. I often wondered if anything could ever unsettle her. "A lot of things can make me angry," she said. I turned to her in surprise. She was smiling. "Can you read my thoughts?" "Of course. We all can. Didn't you know that?" I cursed myself for my stupidity. How could I forget? I tried to recall what I had been thinking while standing next to her, but her smile only widened. The corners of her mouth revealed two thin fangs. Noticing me staring at them, she stopped smiling. She approached me and took my hand. Her hand was thin and cold, and the glove's fabric was surprisingly soft. Together it created a sensation that sent shivers down my spine. "Sorry. I hope I didn't scare you. You already know the answer, don't you?" I tried to lace my words with sarcasm, but the tremor in my voice ruined the effect. She gently looked at my hand. I tried to relax my palm to stop it from shaking, but it was no use. My hand still trembled, betraying my fear. She smiled at me again, this time only with her lips. I was mesmerized by her face. The moon reflected off her skin, emphasizing its whiteness. Her eyes, as dark as the night sky, watched me intently, unblinking. It was like the gaze of a snake, equally focused and unwavering. It seemed as though you could drown in her eyes. They reflected nothing, instead absorbing light like bottomless wells. "It's time," she said. Those words made it hard for me to breathe. A strange heaviness settled in my chest. Sweat beaded on my forehead. It felt like my body was resisting what was to come. I swallowed with difficulty and nodded. Still holding my hand, she began to walk forward. We walked like lovers, holding hands and trying to match each other's pace. I stared at her, unable to look away, just as she did at me. I wanted to avert my gaze, but I couldn't. She was so beautiful. If I were a painter, I would have tried to capture her portrait. Though, I doubt she would have allowed it. Leaves rustled underfoot, carpeting the path in a thick layer. As we stepped on them, small clouds of dust gathered over the day rose into the air. In the distance, a howl echoed, and I flinched at the unexpected sound. She turned her head in that direction and closed her eyes. When she opened them again, her irises glowed faintly, like the moon. "Your eyes look like two moons," I said. She threw her head back and laughed. Her voice sounded like the clinking of crystal glasses at a table, light and fragile. But that fragility was an illusion, just like her slender shoulders and graceful figure. She had been no more than 16 when she met the master. But now her appearance only masked the strength hidden in her slender frame. I had seen with my own eyes how she tore off limbs and broke bones without even straining. Seeing her frown, I quickly pushed those thoughts aside. Instead, I tried to remember what the master looked like. The master. I had only seen him once, but his face came easily to mind the moment I thought of him. He wasn't handsome. He was more terrifying. His features were sharp and predatory. He wore his long hair slicked back, tied into a braid. His eyes were like Yulia's, but still different. His gaze held a cold hardness, a ruthlessness. When he looked directly at you, it felt as though he was calculating the best way to kill you. Every gesture, every word dripped with hatred. I had tried to ask Yulia about him, but she advised me not to dwell on it. I didn't argue, but I couldn't shake the feeling of his intense, seething anger toward me. After all, I had done nothing to him. Could he have read something in my mind? It would explain why he laughed so much when I first met him. If he had read my thoughts, he would have known how terrified I was of him. It was impossible not to be scared of him. The wolves howled again, but I was ready this time and showed no reaction. Yulia smiled at me, as if knowing everything about my attempts not to appear frightened. Who am I kidding? I reminded myself. She surely knew. I glanced at her, hoping to catch something in her expression, but she had already turned away. Yet I still noticed the faint smile at the corners of her mouth. We stepped into a moonlit clearing. Many of them were gathered here. They stood still, watching us. There wasn't a single movement, not a single sound. They stood motionless, like statues or corpses. As soon as I thought that, Yulia tugged on my hand. I understood the hint and tried not to think of anything. As we moved to the center of the clearing, they silently turned their heads to follow us. Some smiled, others looked bored. They all wore the same thing as I did. Black cloaks, black trousers, and black shirts with high collars. The moonlight seemed to be absorbed by their clothes. It was impossible to make out the fabric, though the moon shone brightly. Only darkness, as if their cloaks were woven from the night itself. In the center of the clearing stood a throne. Not a chair, a throne. I don't know where they found it, but it must have been worth a fortune. It stood on a large marble pedestal, with steps leading up to it. 1, 2, 3, 5 steps separated the throne from the ground. I had worked part-time at an antique shop once, so I easily recognized the silver. It coated the throne thickly, twisting into intricate patterns. The master sat on the throne, leaning back, feigning boredom, but his eyes drilled into me with the same hatred as before. I couldn't understand what about me irritated him so much. Yulia tugged my hand again, and we knelt. "I greet you, Lord of Death." Her voice, right by my ear, made me shudder. Seeing this, the master burst into laughter. "I greet you, Lord of Death. We have come for your blessing," she repeated, waiting for his laughter to subside. Grimacing, the master waved his hand dismissively. "Take my blessing if you want it so badly. If this little one doesn't satisfy you, you can come to me, and I'll give you something more." He grinned, revealing his fangs. Cold sweat broke out on my forehead. He was scaring me on purpose. Maybe he enjoyed it. The master looked me straight in the eye and nodded. Damn. He could read my thoughts. How could I forget? He laughed again. "You have a lot to learn, little one." I nodded, unable to speak. It felt like there was a noose tightening around my throat. Even breathing was difficult. She led me away from the clearing. My legs felt weak beneath me. My life flashed before my eyes from this moment backward to childhood and even further. Images flickered. God, I thought, I'm going to die. I don't want to die. Don't be afraid, Yulia said with a smile. It won't hurt. That didn't comfort me much. I felt nauseous. Damn it. I just hope I don't throw up. Suddenly, Yulia grabbed my face and looked straight into my eyes. I told you, don't be afraid. Strangely, I immediately felt calm. My thoughts drifted away. A strange drowsiness, a relaxation spread through my body. I didn't even notice when I smiled. Yulia smiled back and led me onward. The wolves howled again, but their voices now sounded distant, as if through a wall. I felt very good. I wanted to lie down and sleep. Feeling myself starting to sink to the ground, Yulia tugged my hand. Don't sleep. It's not time yet. Soon you'll get plenty of rest. A cold shiver ran down my spine at her words. I trembled. The drowsiness faded. I still felt oddly relaxed, but I no longer wanted to sleep. To be honest, more than anything, I wanted to run. Run forward without stopping until I reached somewhere. Where I won't find you, she interrupted my thoughts. I had forgotten again about her ability to read minds. Answer, she yelled. Do you want to run away from me? Yes, I breathed. Then listen, little one. I will find you wherever you go. There is no place you can hide from me. As soon as night falls, I will find you. And you won't like our meeting. Yulia laughed. She let go of my hand and gestured toward the forest. Run if you want. I'll give you a head start. She laughed again. I stood frozen in place. You're not running. Why? Isn't it what you want? I looked at her in silence. I don't know how I looked, but I suspect I resembled a mouse frozen before a snake, staring at her, too afraid to move, hoping not to provoke her into striking. But like the mouse, I knew it was only a matter of time. Sooner or later she would attack. Yulia closed her eyes and smiled at something. When she opened them again, her pupils glowed from within, like thin black spots against the moonlight. She extended her hand to me. Come to me. Unable to disobey, I took a step toward her. Then another, and another. And now she was holding my hand again, staring into my eyes without looking away. It's quiet tonight. She glanced around. I began to turn my head, trying to understand what she meant. Then her gaze locked onto mine again, and I couldn't look away. I think it's time. Her words felt like a bomb going off in my stomach. I dropped to my knees, my body trembling uncontrollably. She grabbed my chin and lifted it. Then Yulia turned me around and tilted my head to the side. I could feel her cold breath on my skin, brushing against my neck. I felt a sharp prick. Strange, I thought. There are two fangs. Why do I feel pain in only one spot? Pain. It hurts so much, I cried out. Yulia didn't answer. I could hear her feeding right by my ear, the wet sound of her drinking. Stop. She didn't respond. I started feeling cold. Very cold. I grabbed her arms with my own, but I couldn't move them off me. My vision darkened. I could feel myself slipping away. The pain was almost gone now. My knees buckled, but Yulia held me tightly. I was practically hanging from her. Dark spots swam before my eyes. I looked up and saw the moon, drifting across the sky as if someone was shining a flashlight on a wall. Cold. So cold and dark. I slowly regained consciousness. My first thought was that I was alive. Dear God, thank you, I'm alive. That means she didn't kill me. I opened my eyes and saw nothing. Just darkness. Maybe there was something wrong with my eyes, I thought, and tried to touch them. But my hands hit something hard. After squeezing my hands between my body and the surface, I checked my eyes. Everything seemed fine by touch. The fog in my mind slowly cleared, and I could think clearly again. I was trapped. Probably just no light here. Feeling the walls, I realized they were made of wood. That meant I was in some kind of box. A coffin. They locked me in a coffin, thinking I was dead. That's what it was. I just had to hope they hadn't buried me too deep. I pushed against the lid and it gave way. With a crack, the lid broke apart. Dirt poured onto my face and I shielded myself. Fortunately, the earth was damp, so it didn't all collapse in at once, as it would have if I had been buried in sand. I widened the hole. The soil was soft under my hands. I could feel I had cleared enough space and tried to sit up. Just a few inches short, so I bent my head forward. I pressed my ear to the ground and listened. Through the layers of earth I heard voices. Laughter. Then I recognized one laugh. Yulia. Her clear laugh stood out in the chorus of voices. So they hadn't left. They were still up there. I'd have to wait until dawn when they'd leave and I could climb out. Air. I'd forgotten about air. I'd suffocate. I needed to conserve it. I held my breath. I counted to 30, but there was no pain in my chest. I sat there, not breathing, and felt no discomfort. 2 minutes passed and I still didn't need to inhale. 3 minutes. 4. Oh God. They did it. I'm dead. I'm one of them now. A tear rolled down my cheek. I had been so happy to survive, but it turned out I was wrong. Just because I hadn't died didn't mean I was alive. I closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, a glowing dot appeared. It grew until it filled everything. When I opened my eyes, I could see as if it were daylight. There was the red fabric lining the coffin. There was the wood, the dirt. I could see every crack, every uneven surface. Next to me, I saw an earthworm wriggling. Fat. It'd make good bait for fishing. Damn, what am I thinking? Fishing? I'm dead. I should have panicked, but I felt so calm. Of course, corpses don't get nervous. I chuckled and covered my mouth. The last thing I needed was for them to hear me. I instinctively touched my mouth. Of course. Fangs. 2 sharp fangs, curved inward. How had I not noticed them before? I looked down at myself. Clumps of dirt covered my clothes. Blood had dried on my shirt. I tried to wipe it off, but it wouldn't budge. It had already dried. How long had I been lying here? No less than a day. It seemed pointless to wait for sunrise, because I'd fall asleep with them and wouldn't wake up until the next night. I had to get out. I screamed something incoherent. The laughter above stopped. After a while, I heard digging sounds. Shovels were slicing through the soil. Another strike. Another. I realized they were digging me out. I lay back down to avoid being hit by the shovels. After a few minutes, the first shovel pierced the earth and stabbed me in the stomach. Another slashed my leg. I squeezed my eyes shut, waiting for the next strike, but it didn't come. From the sound, they must have realized they had reached me. I felt no pain. The shovels were pulled out of me in unison, and a gap appeared above, showing the stars. The gap was soon filled by the grinning face of the master. "Oh, our little one has woken up. Hungry, I bet?" He looked at me kindly. Oddly, the hatred in his eyes was gone. He was looking at me. Tenderly? Yes, tenderly. Like a mother gazing at her child. He reached into the hole with both hands and started scooping away the earth. Then he helped me stand and lifted me out of my grave in his arms. Still holding me, he crouched and jumped. The pit was at least 2 meters deep, but he cleared it effortlessly. Then he set me down on the ground and brought something to my face. "Drink. You need this." Only then did I realize how hungry I was. It wasn't the gnawing emptiness in my stomach like before. Now I felt an emptiness in my entire body. It felt like all of me was starving. I grabbed what he offered and sank my teeth into it. There was a squeak, but soon it fell silent. A rat, I realized. I should have felt disgusted, but I didn't. Only hunger. My fangs pierced its body and I tasted blood. The fur left an unpleasant taste on my tongue, but I didn't care. I drank. I drank. With every gulp, its warmth flowed into me. The slightly salty taste of its blood filled my mouth. I swallowed, making wet noises as I chewed the body. I tried to squeeze every last drop, draining it completely. But then the blood flow stopped. With a loud slurp, I sucked up what was left and tossed the rat aside. "More," I croaked. The master nodded to someone behind me, reached out, and caught another rat. Everyone silently watched as I finished drinking. Finally, the second body was drained. How was it? The master looked at me tenderly. He pulled a black handkerchief from his shirt pocket and wiped my lips. "Tasty," I replied. "Are you full?" "Yes." "Then come, play with us." He laughed. The others joined in his laughter and began to run. I jumped to my feet and chased after them, trying to catch up. They slowed down a little, waiting for me, but then sped up again. Our running was flawless. The trees around us blurred into one continuous mass. I jumped, ducked, dodged, not even seeing what I was avoiding. My body seemed to know exactly what to do. I just gave in to the feeling and laughed. The others laughed too. We ran, and our laughter echoed in all directions. I tried to imagine what a random traveler would feel if they saw us, and I laughed even harder. Yes, now just the sight of me would strike terror into people. People. How quickly I had stopped thinking of myself as one of them. The thought was so funny that I nearly fell over. We finally stopped. In front of us was a house. It stood alone, the road leading up to it and ending there. No other houses were nearby. The windows were lit. The other vampires had already approached the windows, peering inside. When I joined them, I made sure to stand next to Yulia. "What are we going to do?" I whispered. She looked at me and smiled. "Tonight we feast. We will eat together. We've welcomed a new member into our community, and it must be celebrated properly." I glanced through the window. Inside, I saw a young woman sitting in a chair reading a magazine. "Is she alone?" I asked Yulia. Instead of answering, she looked at a small, quick vampire, and he silently jumped onto the roof. A few seconds later, he leaned over and whispered, "5 people, 2 adults, 2 children, and 1 old woman." "The old woman is mine," someone behind me whispered. I turned to see the master. He was smiling at me, clearly waiting for my reaction. I said nothing and looked back through the window. The master placed his hand on my shoulder, turning me toward him. "You must choose too. It's your right. Tonight is your celebration, and you choose your meal alongside me." "Then I choose her," I said, pointing at the young woman reading. A disappointed sigh came from nearby. Clearly, I wasn't the only one interested in her. The master stepped away from the wall and raised his hand. Everyone watched him in awe. He paused for a moment before swiftly dropping his hand. The sound of shattering glass and screams filled the air. The vampires burst into the house all at once. Some climbed through the windows, others ripped shingles from the roof, and one grabbed the door and tore it off in a single motion. Within seconds, only the 3 of us, Yulia, the master, and I, were left standing in the yard. I looked at Yulia in surprise. She understood my question without words. "Oh, I'm the one who turned you. I think you'll share your prey with me, won't you?" I nodded. There wasn't much point in arguing with her. Finally, the screaming from inside the house stopped. 2 vampires dragged out a struggling young woman and an elderly lady in her 60s. They pulled the woman toward the master, who sunk his fangs into her throat with one swift motion. The old woman's convulsions slowed and eventually ceased. The second vampire dragged the young woman to us and dropped her on the grass. Both quickly returned to the house. They didn't want to miss the feast, I realized. The master tossed the woman's limp body aside. The girl whimpered and crawled toward her. "Grandma, where are you going?" Yulia laughed, grabbing the girl by the leg. After dragging her across the ground, she let go of her leg and smiled down at her. The girl breathed heavily, tears streaming down her face, mumbling something incoherent. "Your first bite," Yulia said, nodding toward the girl, inviting me to start the feast. If I had been as hungry as I was before, I would have bitten her without hesitation, but now I hesitated. The hunger hadn't overwhelmed me enough to calmly kill a person just for nourishment. Sensing my hesitation, Yulia chuckled softly. "Fool, she's already dead. It's just a matter of time. Don't wait. Eat." I grabbed the girl's hand and pulled her toward me. She was surprisingly light, almost weightless. It felt like I could crush her bones with just a little more pressure. I looked into her eyes and whispered, "Forgive me." Then I quickly bent down and sank my fangs into her neck. The fangs slipped in easily, like biting into an apple, only slightly springing back from her skin. The moment the first drops of blood appeared, I couldn't control myself anymore. For a few seconds, the world stopped. It was just me and the life flowing into me in a warm, salty stream. Yulia's face appeared in front of me. She smiled and bit into the other side of the girl's neck. While she drank, her eyes never left mine. Finally, the girl's body stopped twitching and went still. I felt the flow of blood slowing. Yulia noticed too and bit deeper into the flesh. At last, the blood stopped flowing completely. I loosened my grip, and the girl's body fell to the ground. Yulia brought her face close to mine and kissed me passionately. Her tongue slipped into my mouth, intertwining with mine. After a few seconds, she pulled away and started licking my face. I ran my tongue along her lips, licking off the remaining blood. We turned at the same time to look at the master. He was watching us with a smile. He walked over and took both our hands, joining them together. "Do you love him?" he asked Yulia. "Yes," she whispered. I was surprised. I knew she liked me, but love. I never thought she felt anything serious for me. "And you? Do you love her?" "Yes," I answered without hesitation. "I bless you, my children, in marriage. May you be together in sorrow and in joy until—" He laughed. "Until hell freezes over." We smiled and embraced. We would have plenty of time now, and nothing could tear us apart.
Story 2.
Dusk had fallen. Alfred, a young and bored vampire, stepped out of his house. It was an ordinary evening, one that didn't seem to promise anything out of the ordinary. He simply walked along the moonlit road, passing a bench where 2 thugs he despised sat. "Hey, you, got a smoke?" One of them yelled drunkenly, his bulky frame swaying, but Alfred, ignoring him completely, continued on as if nothing had happened. Alfred soon found himself far from the city, wandering across a desolate field, when he noticed an enormous, terrifying-looking, long-abandoned house. Shards of glass protruded from the windows, and the plaster had almost entirely peeled off. The faint rustling sounds coming from within the building suggested that it might be inhabited by either mice or rats. Curiosity gnawed at the young vampire, and despite his fear, he entered the house. Illuminating his way with the screen of his phone, Fred decided to explore the house more thoroughly. What are those noises? Interesting, he thought. I should open that green door and see what's behind it. Slowly and quietly, Fred tiptoed over and opened the door. Horror struck him as a massive, grotesque, clearly mutated rat with glowing eyes leaped out at him. Pink foam dripped from its mouth and pus oozed from the corners of its eyes. The monstrous creature bit into Alfred's thigh. He growled in pain, trying to pry the rabid beast off, but it was futile. Desperate, he struck the rat in the head, killing it. Gasping, Alfred looked down in horror at the wound, a jagged, gaping cut, bleeding heavily. He knew he had to get back home immediately to clean the wound and bandage it. But the pain in his leg was excruciating and he could barely walk. Cursing his curiosity under his breath, Fred limped heavily on his injured left leg. The poor vampire made it home by midday, utterly exhausted from both the injury and his walk under the blazing sun. Angelica greeted him with a gentle embrace. "Fred, darling, where have you been all this time? I've been worried sick. I didn't know what to do." "Angel, sweetheart, don't worry. I'm fine. I was just taking a walk across the field at night and I decided to check out an abandoned house." "So what?" Angelica replied a bit harshly. "That doesn't explain why you're coming home at 3 in the afternoon. What's that on your leg, babe?" "A rat bit me, in that abandoned house." "Don't worry, it'll pass," Fred said, holding Angel close. "We'll just clean the wound, bandage it up, and everything will be fine." Angelica carefully cleaned the wound on Fred's leg with hydrogen peroxide, applied some antiseptic, and bandaged it with a generous amount of cotton padding. Evening came, and dusk thickened. Fred and Angelica started getting ready to hunt at the local nightclub, Morpheus. It was a hot spot for the local Gothic elite, and there was always someone to feed on. Putting on their new Gothic outfits, the vampires stepped out onto the porch. "Beautiful," Fred drawled. "Full moon tonight," Angelica added. Just then, a biker pulled up to their house. It was their friend, Ahriman, a biker and metalhead who worked as a tattoo artist at a local beauty parlor. The guy was 28, but already sported a sizable gut. "Hey, guys, need a ride to Morpheus?" Ahriman asked with a wide grin. "No, thanks. It's not far. We'd rather walk," Fred quickly replied. "Suit yourselves, friends." "I'm out!" Ahriman called out as he kicked up a cloud of dust and sped off into the unknown. The young vampires walked arm in arm along the moonlit road. "How much longer until Morpheus?" Fred asked his beloved. "Not far now. Just 2 more blocks and we'll be there," Angelica whispered softly. "But I'm so tired, and my leg hurts like hell," Fred whined. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll be there soon. You'll have some fresh blood, and the pain will go away," Angelica reassured him, kissing his forehead gently. "Look, we're almost there," the vampires exclaimed joyfully as they approached the nightclub. As soon as Fred opened the door to the club, a Gothic guy named Milred flung himself into his arms. He was always in a state of euphoria, fueled by absinthe and maybe a bit of weed. "Freddie, my dear, when are you going to turn me? You've been promising for 2 years. Turn me tonight and I'll give you $500. I won it in the lottery," Milred babbled rapidly. "Fine, I'll turn you tonight. But keep your money," Fred whispered softly. Fred and Milred left the club and headed into the dark park. "Come on, do it already. I'm tired of waiting," Milred shouted, unable to hide his nervous excitement. They stood in silence for a moment, embraced, and suddenly Fred let out a feral growl, baring his fangs. The moonlight illuminated his long, sharp teeth, and his eyes turned the color of molten lava. It felt as if the entire hell, with Satan at its head, was reflected in those eyes. Fred's muscles tensed, his body turning rock hard. Milred wasn't scared, didn't try to run away. Instead, he clung even closer to Fred, exposing his neck for the bite. And then Fred bit him. Milred didn't feel any pain. In fact, he felt a bliss he had never known before. He moaned softly and rolled his eyes in ecstasy. At that moment, the two of them looked like a pair of kissing lovers, but that wasn't the case. Both Fred and Milred were straight young men, but that didn't stop Milred from placing his hand on Fred's athletic rear. When Fred finished drinking Milred's blood, he tenderly kissed him with his blood-stained lips. Then, Fred gently pushed the Goth away, bit into his own wrist, and offered his blood to the newly turned vampire. Milred drank greedily from the wound. After about 5 minutes, Fred abruptly pulled his hand back, and the vampire and the Goth walked back to the club, arm in arm. "Milred, you should rest now. Go home. If anything feels wrong, call me. My number is 666, 811, Fred said. "Okay, I'm going." "See you later," Milred replied, heading off to his house. Meanwhile, Angelica, having finished her meal of a cute goth boy, smoked hookah with Daymore and watched the news on Abriel's portable TV, which he had built himself. A little about Abriel. Born in 1988, he graduated with honors from the Faculty of Radio Technology at the Polytechnic Institute, and was passionate about creating all sorts of high-tech gadgets. His latest invention was a portable wristwatch TV with GPS navigation. The breaking news was being delivered by the head of the city's epidemiological control, professor of virology, doctor of medical sciences, Lonely Forstrage. Today, 4 cases of infection by the deadly Crete virus have been confirmed in the city. This is truly the most terrifying virus on Earth. Infection guarantees the most agonizing death imaginable. Additionally, it is the most contagious disease on the planet. One only needs to walk through an area where an infected person has passed to contract it. Furthermore, there is no vaccine yet, but we are working on one. Unfortunately, the virus is poorly understood, and we have little hope of success. Now I will describe the symptoms of this truly monstrous disease. Viewers are advised to keep children, the faint of heart, and pregnant women away from the screen. What is the Crete disease? The virus attacks every organ and tissue in the human body except for skeletal muscles and bones. The virus is the perfect parasite, transforming nearly every part of the body into something resembling digested stomach contents, all saturated with the virus. 7 proteins, which are so little known, work together like a well-oiled machine, never tiring, resembling some sort of viral shark. Clots begin to form in the blood, slowing its flow, as these clots gather along the walls of blood vessels, creating a mosaic-like lining on the inner surfaces. The clots thicken and multiply, blocking capillaries and cutting off the blood supply to different parts of the body. Soon, sections of the brain, kidneys, liver, lungs, intestines, genitals, and even breasts, in both men and women, begin to die. Entire patches of skin are affected. Microbleeds appear beneath the skin, forming red spots. The Crete virus strikes connective tissues with particular ferocity, multiplying within collagen, the main protein that holds together our skin and thus our body. Somehow these 7 Ebola-like proteins consume the structural proteins of the body. The victim's collagen turns to mush, and the tissue under the skin starts to die and decompose. Uncontrollable fissures form across the skin, and blood immediately begins to ooze from these cracks. The red spots grow, turning into massive bruises. The skin becomes soft, puffy, and any pressure causes it to peel away. The mouth bleeds, the gums bleed, nearly every small opening in the body starts to bleed. The surface of the tongue turns purple-red, and its skin begins to slough off, either swallowed or spat out. They say one of the most intense known pains is the loss of the tongue's protective surface. This layer is ripped away during bouts of black vomit. The linings of the throat and airways also peel off, falling into the lungs or being coughed out. The heart hemorrhages into itself, softening the heart muscles, causing blood to spill into the chest cavity. The brain clogs with dead blood cells, leading to a state known as brain pollution. Crit attacks the inner surfaces of the eyes, filling them with blood, often blinding the victim. Blood begins to seep from the eyes, trickling down the cheeks in such quantities that it looks like tears. And still, the blood refuses to clot. A stroke may hit, partially or fully paralyzing the victim. Yet, even as the body fills with dead, clotted blood, the blood that escapes outside doesn't coagulate. If you were to examine it under a microscope, you'd see that the blood is dead. The red blood cells are destroyed, appearing as if the blood was run through a blender. Crit kills vast amounts of tissue while the victim is still alive, triggering necrosis in the body's internal organs. The liver swells, yellows, becomes liquefied, and eventually cracks. A deep fissure splits the liver, running inward until it dies and begins decomposing within the still living victim. The kidneys overflow with dead cells and clots, ceasing to function. Blood is immediately poisoned with urine, unable to exit the body. The spleen turns into a large, solid mass of clotted blood the size of a baseball. The intestines fill with clots. The inner lining of the stomach dies and sloughs off in pieces, which pass through the rectum, exiting the body during defecation, along with a large amount of blood. For pregnant women, the crit infection is fatal, resulting in spontaneous miscarriage. The fetus is born with blood-red eyes, a bleeding nose, and is literally saturated with the virus. Crit also devastates the brain, and victims often suffer from epileptic seizures, especially in the final stages of the disease. Their entire body convulses, eyes rolled back, blood spraying in all directions. In some devilish way, this is how the virus most effectively spreads, infecting others through the blood of the convulsing victim. Crit replicates so quickly that infected cells turn into crystalloid blocks, or bricks of compressed viral particles. These formations spread through the heart, intestines, eyes, essentially every part of the body. After death, the corpse suddenly, rapidly, decomposes right before your eyes. The organs, dead for days, trigger a sort of dissolution of the body, resulting in instantaneous decay. And now, that's all for the news today. Stay vigilant, as the virus is most commonly transmitted by bats and vampires, which do not get sick but carry and release the virus into the environment. A bite from an infected vampire is fatal, so if you meet an alluring undead on a dark street, run as fast as you can. Vampires themselves aren't dangerous, only those bitten by an infected rat are. Unfortunately, it's impossible to distinguish between an infected vampire and a healthy one without medical tests. And lastly, beware of rats. This is Professor Lonely Forstridge, virologist, infectious disease expert, and coincidentally, your city news anchor here in Suceava, Romania. Remember to wash your hands before eating and stay healthy. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll keep you updated throughout the day. Oh, how horrifying, Angel whimpered. I'll never be able to sleep now. I told you TV is the root of all evil, Daymore calmly replied. Try to forget about it. Meditate. Damn, that's not it. I'm worried about Fred. Last night, a nasty rat bit him, Angelica said, tears welling up in her eyes. I noticed Fred limping today, but didn't think much of it. We need to catch that rat that bit him and take it to Professor Forstridge. She might be able to create a vaccine and stop the epidemic. You're right, but we need to find Fred first. Only he knows where that abandoned rat-infested house is, Angel whispered into Damore's ear. Let's go. April's TV with GPS navigation will come in handy. Hopefully April won't mind if we borrow it, and the news might be useful too, Dame said, heading out of the club with Angel by his side. Meanwhile, Milred woke up feeling some unexpected changes in his body, but not the ones he had hoped for. As he tried to get out of bed, pain racked his body. Reaching for the table, he shakily grabbed a mirror. What he saw couldn't be described with words. His face and body were covered in huge, festering sores. Is the transformation into a vampire this painful? And why didn't Alfred warn me about this? Milred wondered to himself. I need to find Fred and ask him how to become a full vampire and get rid of these symptoms. Barely managing to rise from his pus-soaked bed, the half-decomposed yet still living Milred stumbled out of the house. Seeing this grotesque figure, people on the streets scattered in all directions, some hiding in their homes, others running aimlessly to escape the hideous, disease-ridden Milred. Help me! Call an ambulance! I need to be hospitalized! The desperate Goth shouted with his remaining strength, but no one responded. After just a few more steps, Milred collapsed, dead. Within minutes, his body had turned into a foul-smelling sludge. At that moment, Margot was walking down the same road with her beloved German shepherd Serge. Margot, a pretty 16-year-old girl and a friend of Alfred's, adored animals. "Serge, no, don't do that!" Margot screamed in horror, watching her dog devour the remains of Milred. But it was too late. The dog had already contracted the deadly virus. It was like a ticking time bomb with no way to stop it. Margot barely managed to pull Serge away, hugging the dog and kissing his muzzle, now smeared with the foul-smelling ooze. What reckless youth we have nowadays, she muttered to herself. Mom always said never to kiss animals. You bad dog, Margot mumbled under her breath, wiping Serge's face with her handkerchief before heading home to clean herself and the dog. As soon as Margot arrived home, she rushed to the bathroom. But suddenly, she felt sick. The unfortunate girl vomited up her entire breakfast and lunch, mixed with bile and blood. The entire bathroom floor was covered in vomit. Horrified, she looked into the mirror. If you could even call it a face, her skin was now covered in festering boils. She grabbed some soap, and despite the excruciating pain, washed her face, leaving chunks of skin and flesh in the sink. The once beautiful girl now resembled a 2-week-old corpse that had been lying in the heat. Barely making it to the phone, Margot called for an ambulance. Half an hour later, the girl was taken to the city's main infectious disease hospital. Good afternoon, Professor Forstridge. I'm afraid we have to report that another patient has been admitted with symptoms of the crit fever, a young nurse said nervously into the phone. I'll be there right away, Professor Forstridge replied. 2 minutes later, Professor Lonely Forstridge entered the patient's room. Despite her young age, she had already achieved significant success in virology and immunology. At 26, she was the chief doctor at the city's primary infectious disease hospital and had unparalleled knowledge of rare and dangerous diseases, which were far more common in Romania than elsewhere. After examining Margot, Professor Forstridge sympathetically shook her head. She's got maybe 2 hours left to live. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do to save her, she said. We need to create a vaccine, and for that, we need the original source, specifically the rat infected with the crit fever virus, Forstridge added calmly before leaving the room. Half an hour later, Margot died in unimaginable agony. On the hospital bed, what was left of her wasn't even human, just a pile of bones lying in a viscous, foul-smelling black-red liquid. Meanwhile, Daymore and Angel arrived at the hospital. "We urgently need to see Professor Forstridge," Daymore blurted out to a nurse who was passing by. "Go up to the 3rd floor, room 316, the nurse responded quickly, visibly shaken by the previous events. "Thanks, we're on our way," Daymore said, grabbing Angelica's hand and rushing up the stairs. "Good afternoon, Professor Forstridge. I need to discuss something with you." Angel greeted her calmly. "Take a seat. Tell me what you need," Professor Forstridge replied. "The thing is, my dear Alfred Magnet was bitten by a mutant rat infected with the crit virus. My boyfriend Fred is also a vampire, so he didn't get sick, but he's responsible for the outbreak in the city. I'd love to help you create a vaccine to save him and everyone else." "What do I need to do?" Angel said through tears, her voice trembling. "All you need to do is catch the rat that bit Alfred and bring it here, along with Alfred himself for research," Forstridge answered in an even tone. "Consider it done," Angel quickly blurted, grabbing Dame's hand as they rushed out of the hospital. "You're probably wondering where Alfred is right now and what's happening to him. Well, the fever does affect vampires, but not as rapidly as it does humans, and the symptoms are quite different, though the infectious disease specialists aren't aware of this. Vampires have a much stronger immune system than humans, which extends the incubation period, but the virus is still able to break down even their immunity to common diseases. Alfred Magnet is living proof of this. Exactly 1 week after being bitten, Fred got sick. What are the symptoms of this terrifying disease in vampires, you ask? Let me explain. The symptoms resemble a well-known disease, rabies. Incidentally, rabies is the only disease vampires can contract. Once the virus reaches a critical level, it invades the vampire's brain, triggering a wild, unrelenting rage. In this state, the vampire's physical strength and speed increase dramatically, and their mind shuts down, leaving only primal instincts. The afflicted vampire experiences bleeding gums and excessive saliva production, causing a constant stream of pink foam to drip from their mouth. Their eyes turn a fiery red-orange, glowing with anger, hatred, and fury toward all living things. Their face becomes twisted in a permanent snarl. Their fangs appear even larger due to gum inflammation, and dark circles form around their eyes. In this state, the vampire loses the ability to speak coherently, able only to growl and howl. They no longer have thoughts or feelings, just an animalistic thirst for blood and a compulsion to bite as many people and healthy vampires as possible. This is no longer the gallant, intelligent vampire from a year ago. He's now a terrifying, deadly creature doomed to suffer until someone kills him, which is nearly impossible. The fate of this beast is to kill everything in its path, spreading the deadly virus wherever it goes. Such vampires are called Death Heralds. Alfred Magnet, the first Death Herald, became the source of a monstrous epidemic that wiped out more than half the population of the city, and has already spread to other parts of Romania. All the vampires in Suceava have turned into Death Heralds, roaming across the country, and there are hardly any healthy people left. The police are fully occupied with hunting down the Death Heralds, especially Alfred himself. But so far they haven't been able to catch anyone. Most of the officers have died from the terrifying disease after being bitten by the Death Heralds. Alfred Magnet, during this time, infected over 1,000 people and vampires, and had no intention of stopping. He attacked people on the streets, broke into their homes, and drank the blood of those asleep. By morning, these people had contracted the fever, and by evening, nothing remained of them but a foul-smelling puddle and a few bones. Romania is doomed to extinction, and soon the entire world will follow unless the epidemic is stopped before it becomes a pandemic. The only way to prevent this is to eliminate all the death heralds and create a vaccine to protect the remaining humans and vampires. During the day, Fred slept in the same abandoned mansion where the rabid rat had bitten him, only emerging at night to hunt. Meanwhile, the police chief himself, Marion Engrel, a 45-year-old man with a hefty belly and a mustache, had launched his own manhunt for Fred. Engrel was a skilled marksman with a long history of hunting rogue vampires. Steeling himself, he decided to venture alone into the terrifying old mansion, which had instilled fear in the townspeople for many years. Upon entering, he saw Alfred Magnet, the first Death Herald, the one who had started it all, hanging upside down like a bat from a rusty sewer pipe, barely held together with insulation. "Hands up! Don't move!" Engrel shouted menacingly, aiming his pistol at Alfred's chest. In an instant, Alfred leapt from the pipe, flipping twice in the air and landing directly in front of Marion. "Stop, or I'll shoot," the commissioner said evenly. With a vicious growl, Fred lunged at Marion, but was immediately met with a burst of bullets to the chest and stomach. Black blood poured from the wounds. In his final moments, Fred sank his fangs into Engrel's throat, and they both collapsed dead. A gruesome sight. The vampire's bullet-riddled body lay on top of the commissioner, his fangs still embedded in the policeman's throat, both surrounded by a pool of blood. At that very moment, Dam and Angel were on their way to the cursed mansion. Angel burst through the door first, and the horror of what she saw left her speechless. Overcome with tears, she threw herself onto the still warm corpse of her beloved, embracing and kissing the disfigured mouth, his open but clouded red eyes. "We should bury Fred properly. We can't leave his body here," Angel sobbed to Dam. "Later, Angel. Right now we need to catch the rat," Damore said, pulling the gun from the dead policeman's hand. "There's the rat!" Angel shrieked. "Dam, shoot it!" Damore took aim and shot the rat right between the eyes. Donning the medical gloves they had prepared in advance, he picked up the rat's lifeless body, and the two of them rushed back to Professor Forstridge. Professor Forstridge reluctantly took the rat's corpse from Dam, extracted a bit of blood with a syringe, and mixed it with some strange compound. "That's it, the vaccine is ready," Lonely exclaimed joyfully. "Now we just need to vaccinate everyone who hasn't fallen ill yet, humans and vampires alike." "Let's start with you, my dear friends," she said gently, as she injected both Dam and Angel, and then herself. "And now, I have something very important to tell you," Lonely said. "Go ahead, Professor. We're listening," Damore replied calmly. "Actually, this isn't a vaccine at all," she said, her tone darkening. "It's a drug that accelerates the incubation period in vampires, granting the infected one absolute immortality. A vampire who receives this cannot be killed by silver bullets or even a stake through the heart, and they retain their mind even in a state of maximum aggression, strength, and cruelty. To be honest, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not even human. I'm a mad genius and a vampire myself, bent on destroying all living things. Yes, call it a delusion of grandeur. But it was I who brought this horrendous virus to Romania, infecting the rats with it. I may be rotten, but I've achieved what I wanted. A bloody hell on earth." Lonely, Damore, and Angel had now become immortal monsters, slaying everything in their path and spreading the deadly virus. The world turned into a bloody massacre, ruled by 3 absolute death heralds.
Story 3.
Breaking a person is easy, in the literal sense of breaking. Just simultaneously strike the chest and abdomen with the edges of 2 hard paws, like branches entwined with stiff ropes, so that the cracking ribs and shards of the breastbone pierce the internal organs. That's it. The person is still alive for a while because, if lucky, the heart remains untouched. But the components of their body die, and they die with them, slowly and painfully. Worse, while they die, they are being eaten. Returning home from the night shift through a bleak neighborhood, I habitually thought about anything but the possibility of meeting killers. I was a well-worn detail of this area, just like the narrow streets between high-rise tenements, where you walk not on asphalt but on a soft, though rough, carpet of garbage, cautiously so as not to stumble. Just like the windows of the first and second floors, boarded up with plywood and bars. The glances of the local tough guys slide indifferently off me, not lingering. Who's interested in the shapeless figure, either of a woman or an old hag, trudging wearily at dawn, so early that it's still dark and cold, to the same hole they crawled out of? Baggy clothes. The extinguished gaze of a person who has long been living on inertia. What were the parents thinking, living in a hopelessly impoverished area, naming their child the romantic Jilly, Night Violet? In a certain sense, one of their own, especially since everyone knows I work as a dishwasher, which means there's nothing much to take from me. But these ones found something to take. They dragged me into a narrow gap among the garbage containers just as I seemed to have passed them. A blow that knocked the wind out of me threw me onto the foul pile of trash that didn't fit on top. Or maybe it hadn't been taken out for a long time. They threw me so hard that my head hit the wall of the building, and I lost consciousness. That was the last thing that was a blessing for me. Because when I came to, I found out my mouth was tightly sealed by a hairy hand, more like a paw. Probably so I wouldn't scream. But I couldn't scream anymore anyway. It seems the one holding my mouth soon realized this and joined the one who was tearing at my clothes, along with my skin and insides. And then both of them started tearing into my flesh. I was choking on the blood spilling from my mouth as my body was roughly held to keep it from slipping, and the two cannibals growled softly and ripped chunks of meat from me. I didn't see them. I only saw the distant sky, a narrow strip trembling, lit by the dim lights of the city where I had always been lonely, useless, and was dying the same way. Lonely, only good for starving cannibals. I thought of nothing. Only burned in the fire of consuming pain, growling and snarling, the cannibals retreated. It seemed someone or something scared them off. One of them yanked my leg as a parting gift. It felt like he tore a strip of skin. I only felt my body shudder. The blood was no longer trickling from my mouth. Consciousness became clearer by the second, and soon I realized two truths. I couldn't move, or it would be like getting shocked until my eyes went dark. There was no point in calling for help. My torn body was bled dry. It was only a matter of seconds. Death. And calling. When you can't even move your lips or tense your throat. Nothing from the past flashed before my eyes, and memory didn't respond with familiar or close images. Everything was overshadowed by the tearing pain that gradually dulled. It seemed like a transition to another lifeless state was beginning. Like falling asleep, if not for pain. Pain, pain, pain. Someone inside me screams, cries. The strip of sky above, visible through my eyelashes, suddenly shrank, and in a panic, trying not to shudder, already in drifting semi-consciousness, I could only think, God, don't let them come back. Please. God. With pain, I pried open my eyelashes stuck together by drying blood. He was sitting on the edge of the container, squatting, leaning over me. A flexible black figure. It seemed to me I even heard him sniffing at me, and I tensed. He's going to finish me off. I wasn't afraid of that, but of new pain. But he bent even lower, miraculously balancing on the edge of the container, and whispered almost into my lips, "Do you want to live?" That question awakened something close to rage within me. Is he laughing? A cold breath on my blood-caked, freezing lips. "So you do. You are strong." He jumped softly, but disturbing the foul piles of garbage also disturbed my torn body, to the blinding pain. Regaining consciousness, I discovered he was standing over me, feet on either side of my dying body, leaning low towards me as if examining. What did he see here in the pitch dark? Cold fingers lifted my chin, causing pain as if slicing my scalp. I was too tired to look. Closed my eyes. Would love to fall asleep. Forever. And didn't even flinch when cool lips touched my neck. A prick. Compared to the bites that tore me to shreds, this prick seemed merciful. I still felt. Something heavy leaned against my neck, seemingly slightly pulling the skin. Then whispered into my ear, "Don't go out during the day. Only at night." Mocking me. As if I could even move from this spot. Then everything vanished. Just vanished, that's all. No strange shadow over me. No one moving. Just the strip of sky starting to lighten, or rather still darkening. And the smell that started to intensify. The smell of excrement, which I hadn't noticed before. Sharp, penetrating, turning my insides, which were torn so much that no skilled surgeon could stitch them up. Unexpectedly, I arched from a strange paroxysm that made my whole body shudder. The wounds, which I had felt as just a single skinned surface until now, suddenly multiplied and roared, and I screamed shrilly along with them. Screamed and didn't believe it, screaming with my torn throat. The rest is hazy. I remember standing between the container and the wall of the building, clutching some heavy object in my hands, long and dragging on the asphalt. No, not on the asphalt. I was stupidly dragging this object from the pile of garbage, and it kept slipping out of my weak but stubborn hands. Then I remember putting on a heavy coat, slouching and walking mechanically down a familiar road. However, this road looked strange, ghostly, dimly lit by neon. My body itched dully, and the coat felt prickly and sticky. I got home to a tiny one-room apartment, collapsed on the couch as I was, in the coat. And my last thought was, I have strange dreams. I got up like a somnambulist, glanced around meaninglessly, and in the dimly lit room lowered the curtain tied long ago. Then didn't bother to throw an old flannel blanket, left over from childhood, over the curtain. Why? Was I scared of something seen in a dream? I don't know. A violent shiver from the cold under the coat woke me up. Sitting on the bed, I shivered and looked around the room. Didn't understand anything. Why is it dark? But I like it. I should take off this prickly coat. That turned out to be no easy task. What happened next reminded me of childhood, when clothes, if not noticed in time, stuck to bleeding scratches or festering wounds. Carefully, I tried to peel the torn lining off myself without causing pain, even the smallest, and suddenly realized the coat had stuck not to wounds, but to skin with drying blood. I gathered my courage and sharply pulled the lining off my knee, bracing for pain. No pain. Rather, there was a slight one, like pulling off an old bandage along with stuck hairs. But I didn't experiment further. Went to the small bathroom and just stood under the shower. Soon the heavy coat slid off me, taking most of the blood staining me with it. In my bathroom, the mirror is narrow, hard to see yourself entirely. I took off the remnants of clothes, which would never be needed again since they were torn to rags, and stared dumbly at what I saw in the mirror. I was, in fact, rather plump, with 10 or 12 extra kilos for sure. Used to be. As my mom used to say, Only the poor are fat on potatoes, pasta, and various flour products. Damn. The mirror reflected a skinny, anorexic girl with a hungry look. Not a single wound. Still staring at the mirror, I touched my hips and stomach. Never thought my fingers were so sensitive. They immediately determined that the skin where the flesh had been torn was as thin as single-use bag films. But I'm alive, just as promised. I stood under the shower again and washed off the remaining dirt and blood with my hands. After thoroughly squeezing my hair and wrapping myself in an old towel, I came out and, glancing at the curtained window, climbed onto the bed with my legs. Hugging these very legs, thin as sticks and not full, with protruding veins from standing work like recently, was it only this morning? I tried to reason. The one I had become had a crazy metabolism. That's why in a few hours my wounds, even the most terrible ones, healed. It helped that in that same recent past I was plump. But how soon will the retribution for acquiring such a metabolism come? How soon will I want to? I imagined needing to find a person and bite into their neck, just because I wanted to live, even in such a form. Damn. Timely thought. My stomach immediately growled, and my stomach nervously tightened. Good thing I sometimes think illogically. Well, kind of. My thoughts jump from one subject to another. I looked at my sorry legs again. Curiously, what will I wear now? My size has decreased drastically. That's when I remembered and felt the greatest gratitude to my mom, who never threw away things, even those left from my childhood. From the built-in mezzanine above the entrance door, I took out 2 suitcases, and half an hour later was looking at myself in the mirror again. There's only one big one in the wardrobe door. God, what a horror. Short jeans, a sweater hanging like on a hanger, and I'm hungry. At one glance at this scarecrow, I bent down, rolled up the jeans just below the knee. Now it's okay. I started to look more like those girls who hang out with the cool guys in our neighborhood. And my face now looks okay too, like those girls. I took my father's belt, wanted to buckle it, but just laid it against my back, flattening the sweater when I heard a quiet knock on the door. The entrance one. Strange. Neighbors usually don't come to me in the evening. They sit at home, afraid to even go out to the stairwell. And I don't have a peephole. Sneaking to the door, I cautiously pressed my ear to it. Quiet. The old Jilly would have gone to the room, to sit and be afraid. But I, already a true child of my city, headed to the kitchen. There you can find something to defend yourself with, if necessary. Just as cautiously, I stepped back a few steps. Only the threshold to the kitchen remained to be crossed. The door slammed shortly, but so hard that I jumped. No, I knew my locks were flimsy. But this... 2 burly, some kind of bullish guys stood on the threshold. However, they didn't stand for long. They quickly flew into the hallway, slammed the door behind them. One jumped at me, grabbing my elbows and covering my mouth. Again? Out of fear and despair, I bit into his palm. The second, baring his teeth, suddenly began to rock his torso back and forth strangely, as if about to sneeze. But with each swing, his head quickly and horribly transformed. He threw off his jacket, and I stared in shock at his bare chest, rapidly expanding and covered with coarse fur. Couldn't watch further. The first, howling in pain from my bite, threw me against the wall near the kitchen. For a moment in flight I thought it was the end. But the arms extended forward, strangely enough, softened the terrible blow, almost smearing me against the wall. Another second, and I found myself under the ceiling, from where I unexpectedly hissed at the intruders in my home. I managed to notice that they both were transforming into some kind of beasts, huge, monstrously muscular, now frozen from my unexpected hissing from such an unexpected place. and I inhaled to take in more air and hiss again, scaring them, and a stream of sweet, rich aroma gushed into my nostrils, overturning all my insides. This smell, I immediately saw it coming from the bitten hand of the first one. Just didn't quite understand why I didn't sense it right away after biting. Maybe from the fright. They didn't have time to move as I leaped from the wall and darted towards the bitten one. Slim, light as the wind in the night, and as tenacious as a tick, in the sense that I jumped on the first one's back, onto his shoulders. They could have pounced on me and torn me to shreds, but all I wanted was to eat. I wanted so much, and I struck with my finger with suddenly sprouted claws on his neck from the side, and sliding down his trembling back bit into the torn vein. He quickly oriented and immediately slammed his back against the wall, but I wasn't on his back anymore. Pushing off the floor, I soared onto his shoulders again. My stained mouth no longer bothered me. I quelled the hunger pang. Nor did the moral anguish. I was drinking the blood of non-humans. Even so, non-humans. The second one jumped up and threw his arm, no, a paw, to rip me off the first one's shoulders. Got too close. I struck with my claws, which now sprung out as soon as I thought about hitting. Hit his eyes. A strike, instantaneous as lightning. He recoiled, covering his face. The first one slammed his back against the wall again. Too late! I leaped from his shoulders to the second one's shoulders, who was howling loudly, rubbing his bleeding eyes. The first one rushed at him, waving his paws. I glimpsed how quickly the skin I had torn on his neck regenerated. I didn't know if these monsters had feasted on my body last night, dragging it into the dark place. But did it matter? They could have been. So why would I hesitate when I can satisfy two thirsts at once? Blood and revenge, killing those who made me go through the pain inferno. The human in me receded into the background. I too turned into a beast, swift, mad from the smell of blood and the desire to kill. And this beast in me tore down all constraints. The second didn't bother me. The eyes are a sensitive and complex organ. They will take a long time to regenerate. So without hesitation, I tried again. Jumping from the shoulders of the first one, like a phantom leaf of burnt paper, I darted to the second and struck at his eyes. Something burned me painfully, hit my legs and skin with fire. Reminder, I am without shoes, with rolled-up pants. What is it? Struggling to regain some understanding, close to consciousness and still intuitively, I realized. The air I moved through at insane speed, almost invisible to the werewolves, was burning me. But my two fingers didn't slide over the eyes of the first one, like the second. Flickering over the fanged maw of the werewolf, they rammed into the eye sockets with such force that they hit the bridge of the nose between them. I pulled my fingers out of the wet elastic mess and jumped back from the rising roar and the flailing claws in front of me. Jumped back again. From the second one, whose eyes, though bloody and flamed, were already regenerating. He clearly still saw dimly, but his ugly nose wings twitched, and he jumped at the scent. Only I wasn't there anymore. He too turned around with incredible speed. But I was already standing nearby, shoved my bloody fingers into my mouth, what their blood did to me. But the main thing, I got information, and strength with it. While the second realized I was right in front of him, I struck at his throat, broke through the stone-like flesh with claws, and yanked the vertebrae towards me. The head flopped back like a poorly sewn head of an old toy. The remaining skin couldn't hold the weight, and the shaggy head thudded to the floor. The falling body I kicked into the first one. The latter, almost still blind, decided that an enemy attacked him and gripped the dead body in iron arms. I found myself behind him and, jumping up, broke his cervical vertebrae with the edge of my hand. He collapsed, still holding the dead body. By then, I was already burning from lack of energy, so without hesitation I struck the warm, shuddering flesh with my claws and clung to the hot source, soothing my pain. When I regained consciousness, I felt a strange calm and satiation. So I calmly perceived when the thick curtains on the window flung open, and someone black in the dark, a solid silhouette backlit by the hallway light, jumped into the room. I sat between the werewolf bodies, returned to human form, and breathing heavily, from time to time continued to bend down, licking or sucking the remaining blood. Let them say a vampire can't drink all the blood from a person. Turns out, they can, if they need to restore their strength, and themselves. "What have you done?" he said quietly. "You shouldn't have started with their blood. It was either them or me," I replied hoarsely without detailed explanation. "He'll understand anyway. You will have to fear both sides." He glanced at something in his hand, shrugged, placed the item on the floor in the room, and left the way he came. I stood from among the bodies and stepped into the room. A medical bag, with blood. So had these not come, things could have indeed been different. Well, all right. Too late to think about what and how would have been. I stood at the window. This world has turned to me in a different way, but I intend to survive in it, despite everything. A knife, with a narrow and thin blade, whistled through the air and crashed into the wooden target leaning against the wall under the windowsill. I dragged the target home in the dead of night, noticing the needed one in the fence around a house set for demolition. Recently, I would have been afraid to even pick it up. Now, I approached and didn't even think it might be too heavy for me. Sitting on the hallway floor, I threw the next knife. The distance is considerable, from the hallway to the farthest corner of my tiny apartment. Stolen knives. Turns out I'm very resourceful. Anyway, what else to do when you have a lot of free time? Now I can't sleep. Well, I can, but I have such strange dreams that even after waking up, I don't always understand whether I saw intricate phantasmagorias emitted by my sleeping brain, or if it was reality, which is becoming more and more fantastical for me. Or I can stay awake and roam around to my heart's content. I had to quit my job. Who would believe that the skinny girl who showed up was the same bulky, hunched woman known to everyone as the most silent dishwasher? I think the cafe didn't worry too much. They waited for a couple of days and quickly found a replacement for me, probably imagining how I would come back and they would, smirking and spreading their arms, say, "Well, you shouldn't have disappeared for so long. There are plenty of people for your place." But I wanted to keep my apartment. A convenient little corner, small and in such a suspicious building that a suspicious lady who loves to walk at night doesn't attract much attention. For the neighbors, I came up with a reassuring story about the transformation of my appearance. Got sick, lay at home for a week without food, lost my job. Some felt sorry for me, and the old hag from the apartment opposite, who still remembered my parents, even brought me boiled macaroni. Turns out, I'm good at stealing. Swift movements, which have become my second nature, didn't allow outsiders to notice what exactly I was doing. The set of knives came from several cafes I visited. They were poorly secured. True, I'm afraid to steal much, especially in open places. Now I know that someone else might still track my quick gesture. Soon I'll owe for the apartment. The landlord will remind me of that with the next mail. Another month, and he will kick me out. I have an idea, to find a job closer to the wealthy quarters. I want to eat too, in all senses. I sighed and stood up. Time, 11th hour. Just the right time to walk and think in the fresh air, especially considering what I usually wear for these walks. Sewn and re-sewn clothes adapted to my current thin figure, looking pretty good in the dark. In general, the saying is true. All cats are gray in the dark. Dressed simply not to attract attention, a jumper, comfortably hanging on me. Over it, a vest made from an old sweater. Old jeans from childhood, cut below the knee, because I could still fit into them, but the length was too short. The outfit was completed by boots bought on sale, never worn because I bought them in the evening and my feet swelled in the mornings. Now they fit just fine. Despite the gnawing feeling in my stomach, I smiled, almost laughed. Whatever happens. 2 stolen knives were tucked into my boots. There are leather pockets sewn by me. The leather from a boot found in a garbage container. That's it. Ready to go. In the tiny hallway, I looked in the mirror and shook my head again. Is this really me? This skinny girl with a pretty nice nose, eyes though not big, but looking normal against the general hungry appearance. My mouth was always small and slightly compressed, but now it looks fitting. Seems even pretty, in the dark, or in dim light. Better, in the shadow. On the way out of the building, I quietly greeted a group of guys, among whom you would not immediately notice 2 girls. Someone answered. Someone snorted. They know me, as they know about my misfortune with illness and work. Don't bother me. However, hey, Jilly, wait. A dark-haired guy caught up with me already at the corner of the building. Tall, broad-shouldered. Due to the warm evening, dressed lightly, a fashionable boxer-like t-shirt and wide pants, the bottoms of which are tucked into high boots. I don't know what they're called. Lots of tattoos on his shoulders and chest. But he's handsome. High-cheeked, with regular features, and his smile is every girl's dream. Although I'm not used to communicating with men, I immediately tensed up. He noticed it right away. "Don't be afraid, Jilly," he said condescendingly. "I just wanted to warn you that you wander around at night too carelessly. And our neighborhood, you understand. Want me to teach you to fight? All our girls can. Come to the basement at the end of the building tomorrow. We have a club there." "Maybe it's too late for me to learn," I said timidly. "We know you're not very young," he smiled. "But we have some older women too. They just learned self-defense techniques. By the way, you look pretty good now that you've slimmed down. You look like a girl. Watch out, they might start hitting on you. Here, just in case." And he handed me some strange stick. Not very hard, about half a meter long. "What is it?" "A police baton? Return it when you come back. We'll be here for a while." "Thanks." "Yeah. Shout if you're nearby and need help. We'll come running." He nodded self-satisfactorily like, "You're one of us, and we won't let anyone harm you." And walked back, swaying on the move. Body something there, probably. And I sighed and looked at the baton. So what now? Can't hide it or disguise it. What? Carry it openly, like a flower was given to me. And why didn't I take a bag? To put it in the bag I now always carry with me. It would look strange. But nothing else came to mind. So I put the baton in the bag, slightly narrowing it. Looks okay now. And most importantly, in my hands. Somehow it really does feel safer. I headed towards the alley that always amazed me. Stepping out of my grimy neighborhood, I immediately plunged into a world of light and celebration. Beautiful cars and ladies being escorted to restaurants. How these 2 strange worlds managed to coexist on the border of one alley always surprised and even amused me. Usually, I didn't walk there for long. Just peeked to observe and returned to my world of empty roads and suspicious individuals in about 10 minutes, whose number I increased. Not reaching the alley, I found that the laces on one boot had come undone. Had to lean against the building I was walking along. Fingers tied the knot, and I nearly fell, startled violently. A girl's scream was piercing and cut off so suddenly that even in the first seconds, when thoughts came to order, I realized something was very wrong. So wrong that inside me everything clenched, but not out of fear, as before. Already in a wild run, driven by a whirlwind of thoughts, no, more like instincts, I gulped. I ate everything I wanted and as much as I wanted. But I missed the blood of werewolves, the most delicious, delightful dessert. My mouth even dried up. I didn't notice when I licked my lips. If they're there, if they attacked someone there and don't notice anything, sweet. My mouth filled with saliva. Growling, I wa'ant. Rounding the corner of the building, along which I rushed, I assessed the picture painted by the building opposite in one glance. Since everything happened close to the end, I saw everything in detail. A rich car almost crumpled to the wall by a small car, and in front of it, several people fussed feverishly, mostly dark figures, with a light spot occasionally flickering among them. And all this under the roar coming from the car. The situation was clear to the limit. Someone was locked in their car, and someone was trapped, judging by the breaking cries and pitiful squeaks. Freeing the one in the car made no sense. Without slowing down, I turned towards the group. Not werewolves. As far as I already knew, they don't amuse themselves with human females. Didn't notice how the baton ended up in my hand. But approaching the assaulters, I realized I shouldn't use it. With my current strength, I'd kill with one blow. But I'm not a killer. I threw the bag with the baton while running, grabbed the first one closer to me by the collar, and yanked, tossing him far. Didn't even look where he flew and fell. Clumsily grabbed the back of the second one's jacket, kicked under his knees, and tossed the limp one aside too. The third one, the last one, turned around and got punched in the stomach. It was even easier to throw him away. He screamed in pain and doubling over, and I, not caring about his ribs, kicked him away. The fair-haired girl, about 17 years old, pressed against the wall, turned out to be beautiful as an angel, despite the makeup smeared by tears on her face and swollen, puffed-up mouth and nose. A crying angel. Her dress, which she was futilely trying to press to herself, was clearly slashed with knives. Why? Scaring her? Do they like it when the victim is scared to death? Sadists. The girl looked at me for a second, stammering from crying, and then, apparently sensing protection in me, threw herself at my neck. I hugged her, intending to whisper something soothing, almost crying myself out of pity. A roar behind made me turn and gasp. The small car was pushed away from the car, and it tumbled onto the road with a clang. A tall guy in a light coat flew out of the car and, oh my God, with 2 pistols. I turned sideways, instinctively protecting the girl hanging on me, crying. The guy was walking towards us. Another angel. A vengeance. Apparently breaking out of the trapped car. He didn't see what was happening and thinks I'm one of them. A sob in my ear. Hands slid from my neck, locked around my waist. A trembling whisper in my ear. Oh, he's going to kill us. Kill us. Isn't he coming to protect her? Puzzled, I quickly surveyed the street, figuring out where to run, grabbing the problematic girl. Into the alley. It's closer. I didn't expect the shot. Casually extending his arm with a gun, the guy froze on the road, the one I had punched in the stomach. The left hand rose. The second one froze on the ground. The right hand rose again. The left joined it. Don't. I shouted, almost screamed when I realized he was absolutely sure to kill the third one. Yes, they are rapists and bastards, but you can't do that, you can't. Too bad the baton was lying too far. I would have gladly thrown it at this creepy guy, at the hands, which too easily managed the weapons. Break them. Despite the frightened angel, someone fierce started rising inside me, ready, if necessary, to pounce on the jerk who thought of himself as God knows what. The guy stopped, looked in our direction, carefully, slowly lowered his hands and walked towards us, as if completely forgetting about the crawling one on the road, though he was walking towards us as if he wanted to shoot everyone who made him nervous. Long, shoulder-length blonde hair fluttered in the night wind, and for this beauty alone, I hated him with all my heart. Although it was the hair that became the clue that he wouldn't do anything bad to the rescued girl, surely her brother. He'll give her a scolding, that's all. Probably. That's what the blonde girl meant when she was afraid. Oh, he's going to kill us. As I recently did, the guy pulled the girl from behind me by the scruff. She obediently unclasped her hands from my waist and hung in his hand like a misbehaving kitten. Big eyes blinked with long lashes, and the charming little mouth twisted, ready to sob at any moment. "Can you stand on your feet?" the guy asked calmly, and put her on the ground. On the asphalt, that is. The girl waited for him to put away his pistols and take out his mobile, and with tiny steps approached me again. Thin fingers squeezed my hand. He stared at our hands unblinkingly while monotonously ordering the phone to call a tow truck and come for him and his sister, aha, I guessed right, at a local bar. "Is there any bar with a restroom nearby?" he asked me irritably, without taking the phone from his ear. "Yes." The lame onager. "Heard that? Bring the car there." "I'm not going anywhere looking like this," the girl complained, spreading her arms so he could see her in all her pitiful condition. The guy looked her over. "It'll do. I'll get your purse and shawl from the car. It's long and wide enough to cover the consequences of your whims." But He simply didn't listen, turned to the car and walked away. Oh. His hair is long to his shoulders only on the sides, but down his back flows a luxurious tail. So trendy. I wonder how many shampoos he uses to maintain this perfection. I instinctively touched my dark twisted in a knot hair. Could wear it loose. It's not long, but it's greasy from the dirt. I wash it only with hot water. On the way he bent down, grabbed the scruff of the third guy, the one not shot, and dragged him to the car, throwing him at the wheels. Even from here, from us, you could hear him clearly say, "Guard until the tow truck arrives. If you fail, you'll join your buddies." Got it? With things in hand, he approached us, detouring slightly to pick up my bag with the baton. I got worried. What if he takes it away and I have to return it? The thing was given to me temporarily. What is this? It's mine. So you drove them off with this? Yeah. Will you return it to me? Did you take self-defense courses? No. Just know a few moves, I lied easily, just to get the baton back. All right. You're coming with us to the bar to help Annette clean up. Hungry? I felt nauseous from his question, if the lad is from the rich and generous. Yes, I replied defiantly. Then let's go, and we'll talk there. And we went. Me and Annette like guilty ahead, he guarded from behind. I almost burst into nervous laughter. The shepherd leads his flock. Obedient sheep. In the bar, the sheep went to clean their feathers in the ladies' room. Over my shoulder, the guy asked what to order for me. "Steak, rare," I answered calmly and only turned away from him, swallowing. Am I really going to eat real meat today? We spent a ton of napkins because Annette was afraid to wash off the traces of blood and tears with local water. Seeing the blood, I carefully asked, "Annette, "Are you okay?" "I mean the blood." "I'm fine," the girl sighed. "Only one had very sharp nails. He, when tearing my dress, kept." In the mirror, I saw her eyes fill with tears. "I understand. Don't cry. Now you're with your brother, am I right?" "Yes. Chris is my brother. And what's your name?" "Jilly." "Jilly, do you live here?" The conversation went on almost about nothing, just to talk, and then Annette started telling how scared she was. I listened silently, understanding she needed to speak out, to put into words the recent fear, and forget about it. So I learned she really did act up. Leaving the restaurant, she insisted that she knew a wonderful bar behind one of the houses on this street, where her brother had never been. Chris said it was too late to walk further, but she didn't listen, and ran behind the house that seemed familiar to her. He drove after her. And here, behind the house, they got caught in a trap. Listening to the story, I felt something strange in it. But what? Probably the strange efforts of the guys from the neighborhood to rape a girl from society. They trapped her brother in a cage so he couldn't interfere with their plan. They threatened and scared the girl. And the brother behaved quite strangely. No, of course, I understand that all deaths can easily be attributed to self-defense, especially if the defending party is a rich person. No. There was definitely something I didn't understand in this situation. While we were away, Chris ordered a table in a separate corner. He wasn't too lazy to get up and show where each of us should sit, though I could figure out where exactly to sit without him. A flat plate with steaming meat, beautifully framed by the blood flowing from it, stood only in front of my chair. I'm afraid my hands trembled a bit as I cut this piece, clinking the knife and fork a bit louder than necessary. I was most afraid I couldn't collect the blood from the plate. Therefore, having the piece, I began to dip each next cut into the sweet gravy. So the last one I swallowed almost dry, with enormous gratitude to the chance that for the first time in a month fed me to my fill, and finally looked up. Annette watched me, her mouth open, with pity. Her brother, with some concentrated attention. Yes, I imagine what a sight I must have been, hastily devouring this piece. I wonder how I should address this Chris now, by name or calling him Sir. And I'm also curious if he will order another portion of meat, seeing my gluttony. He did. This time I tried to eat the piece to enjoy it fully. And Chris, thoughtfully watching the rapidly shrinking meat, offered me a job as a companion for his sister, an unofficial bodyguard, like introducing me to everyone as a distant relative. Annette immediately rejoiced, and I said I would think about it. He wrote down my address, lamented that I didn't have a mobile. 2 hours later, I sat at home, lazily throwing knives at the target, full and content. So without hesitation, I opened the door when someone rang. Chris. Unbelievable. So, this is where you live. I brought you a mobile phone. A work one, he clarified at my raised eyebrows. But I still don't know. I didn't notice his quick movement. His hand lay on my neck. He leaned towards me and pressed his lips to mine. The upper one couldn't withstand the pressure and split. The pain drowned in bliss. I couldn't imagine kissing could be so... And he ruined it. Lifted his head and, looking down at me, bent again, to lick the drop of blood from my lip. Savored. That's what it is. And I thought, how did she, with just one stick? How come the coven doesn't know about you yet? Anyway, I don't care. Starting tomorrow, you're on duty as a companion. He nodded arrogantly and left, leaving me honestly in turmoil.